I did not expect to be taking a 3-week break from long-form videos, nor did I want to take such a long break. If you guys have been keeping up with my community posts on this channel, which I can now make now that I have 500 subscribers, thank you to everyone who has helped get me to 500 subscribers, I kind of talked about why I was on such a long break from these longer videos. Originally, I had some videos that I was going to do related to Kanye West albums, but him wearing a White Lives Matter shirt and going full anti-Semite was not something I had on my 2022 bingo card. And after seeing just how much he would dig an even deeper hole for himself, I didn't really feel comfortable making those videos, especially since they were gonna talk pretty positively about Kanye's music, and that felt like it would have been a little bit of a tone-deaf distraction. So for now, I'm pushing those videos back. I'm not straight up canceling them. I may end up combining them because one of them is going to be part of a new music-related series that you'll hear about very soon, but I just didn't feel comfortable making those right now. So after some thinking and discussing with some people, I decided that I would make my return video the introduction to a new gaming-related series that I'm bringing to the channel. I did mention that now that 10 years later is no longer a thing, I could do other things beyond just music, and I thought making some gaming videos would be pretty fun, and this is a series that I thought would be great to add to the channel because it's something I've been thinking about for years now. Previously, I did some of these as written articles for an outlet that I was working for, but now I decided, you know what, it might be fun to just make them into videos for this channel. So, welcome to Series Retrospective. Exactly as it sounds, I'm going to be taking a game series that I really enjoy or has really deep importance to me, and I'm going to talk about both the history of the series as well as my own personal history with it. Give my thoughts and opinions about the games, as many of them as I've played, because with these series retrospectives, I will warn that I have not played every single game in every single series that I'm going to talk about, but hopefully I can reflect on the series as well enough for you guys to be able to enjoy this series. So, to kick things off, I wanted to talk about one of the most important gaming franchises that has been a part of my life as a gamer. You could see it from the title, so let's talk about Spyro the Dragon. Spyro the Dragon was perhaps the first video game series that I really played in my youth. My early childhood was obviously largely spent on licensed kids games on the original PlayStation, but Spyro was almost like a gateway for me into the deeper, bigger world of video games that existed past all the Rugrats and Power Rangers games I had on the PlayStation 1. And despite the innumerable ups and downs and wildly varied reception between titles, my love for this franchise persists. With this video and this series as a whole, as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about a mixture of each game's development history and my personal history with these franchises. That's kind of the whole joy of this series, getting to share how much a series has impacted me and celebrating its great moments while obviously not forgetting the down points. So to jump into Spyro's history a little bit, let's head back to 1998, the year of my birth, with Spyro the Dragon on the PlayStation. This was Insomniac Games' second game following 1996's Disruptor, a game that was received kindly but sold pretty poorly. That said, the critical success encouraged publisher Universal Interactive Studios to allow Insomniac to make another game. So, Sony legend and game development legend Mark Cerny was the producer, and he wanted his team to create a game with more mass market appeal, as the younger demographic of the PlayStation was kind of wanting thanks to the greater amount of all ages titles that were available on the Nintendo 64. This would lead to the creation of a purple dragon who collects gems, frees crystallized dragons, and protects the world from the vicious, nasty Nork. While Sony had previously hit it big in the platformer market with Crash Bandicoot, Spyro immediately set itself apart from Crash. The game was less linear than Crash, being set in more open-ended environments with an emphasis on collectibles. Thus, Spyro kind of felt more like a direct competitor to Nintendo's Super Mario 64. Spyro's ability to glide and travel distances in the air also made him unique, as did the game's 3D engine that displayed backgrounds with varying levels of detail. And beyond those unique features, the game was just fun. With simple controls, clever level design, and catchy music from composer Stuart Copeland, yes, the same Stuart Copeland from The Police, Spyro the Dragon was an immediate winner, and it was clear to see why Sony turned him into one of its early mascots. Weirdly, Spyro 1 was actually the last of the 3 original games that I would end up getting. For some reason as a kid, I got them in reverse order. And to be fair, it is my least favorite of the original trilogy, though that mostly comes down to the fact that it's the first one. The sequels would refine what it did so much that it left the original in not quite as strong of a place, but that's not to say it isn't a great game because it is. Growing up with a PlayStation and not a Nintendo 64, I think this sort of filled a gap that I didn't really know existed at the time, because I didn't get to own games like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, but Spyro made sure I wasn't too jealous of that. And I still think the game is a treat with colorful visuals, a solid amount of content, and great level design, and yes, that's even with the behemoth that is Treetops. Spyro fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm impressed by how well it still holds up, and I definitely think it's still worthy of your time. But after a slow start, Spyro sold very well over the 1998 holiday season, meaning the series was ready for some sequels. 1999's Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage made some big improvements to the original game's formula. Spyro's movement was smoother, the gameplay as a whole was more challenging, and there was far more mission variety. Instead of freeing dragons, Spyro spends his adventure collecting talismans for making it through levels in the world of Avalar. He would also earn orbs for winning different mini-games as well. Spyro also had more abilities than before. He could swim, climb ladders, and perform a head bash move, which gave the gameplay even more variety. Top it off with smoother graphics and the introduction of fan-favorite characters like Hunter the Cheetah and the titular villain Ripto, and Ripto's Rage was a steady step forward for the franchise. Weirdly enough, this is the Spyro game I've probably replayed the least, and I don't know why that is, but don't let that be an indictment on the game, because Spyro 2 in my eyes took everything that made the first game great and did it even better. The levels were more grand without being overwhelming, the hub worlds were more unique, the visual design was even sharper, and the boss battles were even more compelling. These days when we think of yearly sequels, we tend to think of them just being cash grabs, but it's amazing how much Spyro 2 was able to improve on and change and refine the original game. It's a game I've got a lot of memories with, and it's an all-around fantastic sequel. And after defeating the Raging Ripto, Spyro made another quick return with Spyro Year of the Dragon in 2000. This game brought Spyro to the Forgotten Worlds, where he would collect 150 baby dragon eggs stolen by the evil sorceress. On the surface, Spyro 3 didn't change too much from the original games, but it included more vast worlds as well as new playable characters. Sheila, Sergeant Bird, Bentley, Agent 9, these characters added greater gameplay variety to a game that already had plenty of it, and they made the story even more charming. Year of the Dragon occupies a special place in my heart, as it was not only my first Spyro game, but one of the first video games that I ever owned, even though I've probably completed more 100% playthroughs of Spyro 1 just by way of that game being a bit shorter. Spyro 3 is the one I feel like I've put the most time into. Years before I finally completed it fully in 2014, I loved doing any percent runs where I would do everything I could to skip paying for money bags, the greedy bear who blocks you from progressing unless you pay him in gems. I've had several times getting through the game without giving money bags a single gem, and that was honestly really fun to just kind of break the game in that way. I've used this term before with a lot of games, and you'll hear me use it a couple different times with some games, but I almost feel like I've broken Spyro 3 open with how much I've played it, and to this day, it's still my favorite in the series, and probably one of my top 10 favorite video games ever. It feels like the culmination of everything the previous games wanted to do with the most polish the series has ever seen. It's one of those games that I just never get tired of, and it's one that I can't recommend highly enough if you haven't played it already. But after Year of the Dragon, Insomniac Games stopped working on the Spyro series. Feeling like it had done everything that could be done with the character, the developer gave Spyro to Universal Interactive Studios and went on to make the wildly successful Ratchet & Clank series, a franchise I am definitely going to talk about in the future. And while Spyro continued across multiple platforms, including those from Sony's initial rival Nintendo, the series desperately punched below its weight for the next few years. Despite some mildly successful handheld titles on the Game Boy Advance, including a collaboration with Crash Bandicoot, Spyro Orange, and Crash Purple, Spyro's next mainline adventure, 2002's Spyro Enter the Dragonfly, still lives in infamy among Spyro fans. Beyond being so similar to the original trilogy to the point where it didn't feel like anything close to an evolution of the formula, Enter the Dragonfly battled with really bad frame rate, long loading times, and several bugs and glitches, which kinda made it Spyro's first true stinker. I went back to try it out a bit before making this video, and I couldn't really figure out what it was trying to do. It felt like a copy and paste of Year of the Dragon, but one that somehow was much worse, much more lifeless, and lacking in a lot of the soul that made Year of the Dragon so special. 2004's Spyro A Hero's Tale was, if nothing else, an improvement given that it fixed those technical hitches, but the game still felt unimaginative compared to the original trilogy. While giving that game a try before this video, I honestly often felt like it was trying to play catch-up to the series Insomniac essentially replaced it with, Ratchet & Clank, as well as Jak and Daxter in some regards too. Spyro had morphed from an iconic PlayStation platformer to a shell of his former self, and it seemed like he'd never get back to his past form. No game made that more clear than 2005's Spyro Shadow Legacy on the Nintendo DS. Considered the final game in the original mainline Spyro continuity, this attempt at turning Spyro into an RPG battled with shallow, repetitive gameplay and technical issues. Thus, it created an experience that lacked all the luster of the classic entries. I never went anywhere near this game before, but given what I hear from the fan base, it's probably for the best that I don't. With Spyro's woes continuing, Universal Interactive, now known as Vivendi Games, decided to reboot the franchise as The Legend of Spyro. Between 2006 and 2008, 3 games came out of this franchise: A New Beginning, The Eternal Night, and Dawn of the Dragon. A CGI theatrical film even entered development, only to receive a cancellation announcement in 2010. A little after its supposed release date, might I add. Forgive me if I skim through this part though, because this is another subset of Spyro games I never got to play. Other than playing the tiniest bit of A New Beginning on the PlayStation 2, most of my experience with this series came from watching my brother play it, because as someone who didn't really get good at beating video games until around 2014 to 2015, I got a lot of experience by watching my brother play video games. Glad I'm not in that boat anymore. I've chopped down a good portion of my backlog. But from my research, this was another polarizing set of Spyro games. While the attempt at a somewhat mature, story-focused refresh was admirable, this sub-series was a radical departure from the Spyro formula. Previously a platformer, The Legend of Spyro felt more like an action-adventure beat-em-up game. Even if it looked like he got back on his feet, it was clear Spyro was still kind of going through an identity crisis. And Vivendi would merge with Activision in 2008, meaning the latter earned the rights to the Spyro series. After an attempt at a more mature reboot called Spyro's Kingdom was shut down in 2009, Activision officially revealed Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. This would be a mix of an RPG and platformer featuring toys that came to life in the game through an NFC portal, and the series would go on to influence several toys-to-life video games such as Disney Infinity, LEGO Dimensions, and Nintendo's Amiibo line. I plan to discuss this series a little later down the line, but despite its success, many gamers were furious at its announcement. They felt that Spyro's inclusion was arbitrary and only slapped onto the title to help sell it. Even with an ambitious concept for a kid-friendly game, adding Spyro's name appeared as a way to grab the attention of players that may not have otherwise cared about this toyetic video game. I'll go into this when it comes time to make that video, but I even remember people sending Activision death threats over the game. Imagine all that over a game based around toys for an audience who still needs to be reminded not to put glue in their mouths. The sequel, Skylanders Giants, notably omitted Spyro's name from the title, and all future Skylanders games would follow suit. And by 2014, Activision even admitted that it used Spyro as a hook for Skylanders, and the publisher would go on to treat the series as a wholly separate IP. The new franchise's success, though, made it look like we would not get a proper Spyro game at any point in the future. By 2016, though, Skylanders was on its last legs. That year's entry, Skylanders Imaginators, sold well below expectations, and Activision quietly canceled the series by announcing that there wouldn't be a new game in 2017. Around the same time, the publisher revived Spyro's fellow PlayStation mascot, Crash Bandicoot, with the Insane trilogy, and it was a massive success. So much so that it led many to wonder if Spyro would get the same treatment, and Activision made it clear that it was aware of the demand for a remake. Fans were told to just keep asking, and the fans, this one included, definitely did. And sure enough, we got our wish. In 2018, after numerous leaks, Activision announced the Spyro Reignited trilogy, a full remake of the original 3 games for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. This remake brought massive visual upgrades to the series, but also much needed quality of life improvements that made the games play better than ever. It would later receive releases on the PC and Nintendo Switch, bringing this excellent remake to even more gamers. As a lifelong fan, I remember the overwhelming amount of joy that I felt when this got announced. I loved the Insane trilogy and was happy to see Activision go back to the series, but while Crash was a game I began to enjoy and appreciate in my teens to early adult years, Spyro was one I had been playing since I was old enough to comprehend what each button on a controller did. I had a much deeper connection to Spyro than Crash. I grew up with the series after all, so while the Insane trilogy was amazing, one of the biggest things it did was make me pray that Spyro would get the similar treatment from Activision. And it felt like leaks were coming up every single week for it. It was gaming's worst kept secret back in 2018. But when it finally got that official announcement, you don't know what I was feeling. It was fantastic to see Spyro make a triumphant return, and the amount of love that went into this remake was stunning. I'm not even a trophy hunter in my games, but I ended up getting the platinum trophies in every game in the series when Reignited came out. That's just what the series has done for me and how much I've broken the original trilogy open. The Reignited trilogy somehow took 3 of my favorite childhood games and not only faithfully remade them, but created what I can honestly say might be the new definitive versions of them. Not that I wouldn't be able to go back to the PS1 versions, but this remake improved on the originals in a massive way, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. Now with this series, I like to also do a bit of a what's next kind of thing, kind of give a bit of a history as to what's happened since the release of the latest entry in the franchise, and whether to expect anything new anytime soon. That's something especially worthwhile in this case, because since the release of the Reignited trilogy, Activision has been a bit mum on Spyro's future. It probably doesn't help that Activision has had a lot on its plate, from turning developer Toys for Bob into a Call of Duty support team, dealing with a massive amount of court cases for sexual misconduct, and going through what's obviously a widely publicized acquisition by Microsoft. Given the success of the remake though, it's hard to imagine Activision just letting Spyro go to waste. Sales seem to have been pretty good, while critics and fans both praise the game, so anecdotally it seems gamers are more than ready for a new Spyro title, myself included. However, the most Spyro content we've gotten since Reignited is Spyro's appearance as an Easter egg in Activision's Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time and Sony's Astro's Playroom. Many fans also took note of a Crash Bandicoot 4 art book where one of the artists showcases that a level features a hint of Spyro. In the artwork, Spyro appears as a float while a billboard next to him seems to read Spyro 4. Activision probably wouldn't include this in an official art book if a Spyro 4 wasn't at least being considered, so an announcement may come sooner rather than later. Fingers crossed on that one. But either way, Spyro the Dragon was the series that introduced me to the 3D platformer, which has become my favorite video game genre. Being that it was also my first game series outside of licensed kids fare, it opened the door for me to discover so many other great games throughout the years. And while the series has had its ups and downs, the original trilogy remains fantastic, and it makes me happy to see it return for a new generation with the Reignited trilogy. It's great to see Spyro make such an incredible comeback, and I'm hopeful this is only the beginning and that more excellent Spyro adventures are on the way. Long live the legendary Purple Dragon. But that's my personal experience with the Spyro series. What's yours? Do you love the series? Do you hate the series? Are you indifferent toward it? What are your favorite Spyro games? What are your least favorite Spyro games? What kind of memories do you have with the series, and where would you like to see it go next? Whatever your thoughts and experiences are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And my next video is going to be the introduction of my next music-related video series on this channel, but I'm not going to mention what that is yet. You will learn it when that video is ready to go. Until then, I will at least mention what my next series retrospective is going to be. So I will reveal what the next series that I'm going to talk about is, and it's going to be the Sly Cooper franchise. I'm a huge fan of Sly Cooper. It's probably one of the next most important franchises for me next to Spyro, and another one that I have a crazy amount of experience with, so that's what's coming up next. So stay tuned for that, but until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.